Well, hi there, and welcome once again to Feeling Smarter. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Tim Miller. G'day, Tim. How are you?
Yeah, going well, Aaron. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Well, amongst the excitement of our State of SMSF webinar, Tim, you were busy and eagerly awaiting some inflation numbers, which, of course, are important in the context of contributions and transfer balance caps. So, what do we get to learn from this CPI adjustment and what it means to various caps from the 1st of July 2026?
Yeah, okay. So I think the main thing is that we've got two distinct. Well, we've got multiple calculations that are performed from a superannuation environment point of view, but we've got two that we tend to focus on the most. One being the general transfer balance cap, which is aligned with CPI, and then we have our concessional contribution cap, which is aligned with average weekly ordinary times earnings, AWOTE, and both those numbers, both the legislatively referenced numbers as to how to do the indexation are both released around this time of year. So the CPI numbers are always released in January and the AWOTE numbers are always released in February. Now, straight off the bat, what I would say, Aaron, is that we've known for some time because wage growth has been quite strong for the last sort of 6 to 12 months that we've already hit the factor that we need to hit to get an increase in the concessional contribution cap. So even though we don't know that officially until the end of February, we can say with some confidence that the concessional contribution cap will be at the very least $32,500. And therefore the non-concessional cap will be 130,000, which then has implications on our bring forward amounts as well. But importantly, the indexation of the general transfer balance cap is done based on CPI. And of course, because you can't have any piece of legislation say exactly the same thing, right? So the concessional cap is indexed based on the middle month of the quarter for AWOTE, so that's always the November average weekly ordinary times earnings. Whereas for the general transfer balance cap, it is based on the CPI for the December quarter, right? Now, why am I emphasising that? Because the government, in their infinite wisdom, from September started introducing CPI numbers monthly, right? So now, for the first time ever over the last few months, we've actually got monthly CPI figures. So that led us to contemplate, well, do we have to use the month of December or is it the quarter of December? And if it's the quarter of December, how is that worked out? And in doing all of this, look, let me shorten this by saying the government reset a lot of their numbers, and so it led to a lot of confusion. End result, we get an indexation of the general transfer balance cap from the 1st of July 2026, where the cap will be indexed to $2.1 million.
And I think, Tim, it's fair to say, amongst all that confusion in trying to work that out, we only actually just got there in the end.
Yeah, so when you start to muck around with months versus quarters, if you looked at the monthly rate of December, you go, oh, we smashed it. You know, we were well and truly with the factor for the December month because growth was quite high. That we well and truly exceeded the $2.1 million. If you do the actual quarterly calculation, the number was $2,100,800. So we only just got over the threshold. And as we know, the thresholds only index when the formula puts you above the level and then you round down. So if it had been like
2,999,000.
Yeah, it wouldn't have got there. So it could have been 99,999, wouldn't have got there. But because we were over that 2.1 by $800, we're going to see a cap increase.
Yeah, and so I guess the next part here is because we saw this, if I'm not mistaken, probably around 2021, where we had both the general transfer balance cap increase and simultaneously we saw the concessional contribution and therefore non-concessional cap increase. So those two naturally, or not naturally, are equally connected together as they are looked at independently. So in that context, I'm thinking about the ability to make contributions. So there will be some planning considerations for people in the lead up to 30 June. and then ultimately some considerations that they need to give where people are already within a bring forward period and what they can and can't do throughout that period of time.
Yeah, and we've done a lot over the last few years with regards to various contribution strategies and other things, and I think one of the key things that we have to contemplate here is that individuals have to plan based on what capacity people have to make contributions, right? So, and their age and other things. So if this is the final year that you can make contributions, then what happens in the future is irrelevant. You got to make your contributions, right? So that's one thing to consider. But if we're going to see the full bring forward amount, right, move from 360 to 390, then does that incentivize somebody to not trigger the bring forward before 30 June this year to be able to make a larger contribution next year? I also look at the bring forward and go, well, in many instances, it's not as exciting as it used to be because we can contribute up to 75 anyhow. And so therefore you can just make each year's contribution without satisfying a work test. But, what the indexation of both does, right, is it provides a sort of a bit of a nuanced approach to what you do and when. But equally, what you've done in the past 2 years is important as well, because if you've triggered the bring forward, either in this current year, the 25-26, or in the 24-25 year, then you're locked in for at least one more year of that $360,000. Now, the indexation of the general transfer balance cap, if your balances rise, might give you that capacity to make the contribution up to the 360. But you're not getting that additional 30,000 straight away.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to remember is there may be examples where throughout the journey you make a non-concessional, you trigger the bring forward, you haven't done the entire amount. Due to circumstances, your total superannuation balance has maybe pushed you above that 2 million in year 2. So it in essence pushed you out of the qualification to be able to make contributions. Now, revisiting that calculation when you get to the end of the year is important, because in that third year, if you are now within what will become 2.1 million, well, it gives you the opportunity to, in essence, top up to what was that 360,000 at that time. Importantly, as you said, not 390, but to finish off that period. So understanding all of those ingredients, I guess, that get made up as to what we call our contributions cake, I guess, giving that sort of terminology, getting all that stuff right is really important, because ultimately, if you get that wrong, the way in which ultimately you end up in an excess position is not as detrimental as it was once previously, but is certainly something that people don't want to find themselves in.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I guess one of the things that I'd finish off with, Aaron, is going back to your point about, this is only the second time since the introduction of the transfer balance cap that we've seen synergy between the two amounts. But what's quite remarkable is that if we use a start date of 1 July 2017 for the lower caps and what was it, 100,000 for concessional contribution at that point in time, with a bring forward of 300, we're not even a decade on yet, not quite a decade on, and we're seeing people with $500,000 more in super being able to utilize the full 3 year bring forward amount, whereas previously, if they had $1.84 million, they'd be knocked out of being able to make a contribution. So, this method of calculation and this opportunity that's been provided through the general transfer balance cap and making non-concessionals, has provided a lot of people with a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no doubt this topic of contributions is going to be of great discussion and relevance over the coming months as people get ready for, again, what will be some fairly substantial increases again and create some unbelievable contribution opportunities for superannuation members, whether they are in accumulation phase or even in retirement, as we know, as you said, from age 75, or the ability to contribute all the way through to age 75. So, Tim, thanks once again.
Always a pleasure.
Everyone, have a great rest of the week. Take care and bye for now.
See you all.